Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
All right, welcome to a special edition of our Ducks and Pucks podcast. As we talked about before, we're doing more summer podcasts, and we'll be talking about hockey all during the offseason. On this one, we've got Eddie and myself, also some of our writers. We have Adam, Tasha, Phil, and Thomas on with us as well. So you'll have 6 different people providing some input. We're going to be talking about some of the rumors of some of the players that have been out there mentioned possibly coming to the Ducks. We'll talk about some injury news and explain what's going on with some of our guys, and probably talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup Final. I think first we'll look at some of the rumors out there of who's possibly going to come to the Ducks. And Eddie, there's been a few names: Lucic, Kessel, Nash. What do you think about some of these players that they've been talking about?
Probably 90% chance none of them come, but you always get these kind of rumors at the end of the season when guys on teams that haven't really performed, or players on good teams that haven't really performed up to expectation, like Nash and Kessel on the Leafs, and obviously Lucic, like you mentioned. And these are top profile players, and you don't really see these types of guys get moved every season. But there's potential. The Leafs are rebuilding, so Kessel could come. Not that I really want to see him come over, and Lucic could be a guy that could fit on that top line too, but you got to look at what kind of price these guys would come with.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be interesting to see. Another thing that's been mentioned out there is Bolesky. We heard that it looks like he may be trying to be re-signed. We haven't been able to confirm it yet. It's just a rumor for now, but that's why these other names have popped up, especially Nash. A lot of people are saying, hey, let's go get Nash and put him on the first line. What are your guys' thoughts about Nash coming over and maybe being a top left wing?
Well, my problem with Nash coming over is that I know that if we do sign someone to that high caliber, is that we won't have the salary cap, not only for this year, but for next year. Because we have a lot of free agents coming up in the following season, and we need to have money for that.
I agree.
Yeah, that's probably one of those high-profile guys. Nash is being paid $7.8 million for the next 3 seasons, and I mean, I'd love him on the Ducks, but not for that much. If the Rangers would keep some of that salary, that'd be great, but I don't think they'd be willing to do that in any deal unless we gave them some great young players, but that's an even worse idea.
Yeah, I think you guys are all right on that, too. I think Lucic is another one that people talked about, too, Eddie, and I think there's, that's kind of a problem with him as well. He's getting paid $6 million right now, so I don't see him wanting, less money if he was to come to the Ducks, too.
Yeah, and you look at the Nash situation, too, we'd kind of be looking at paying what the Rangers did when you had to bring over Nash from Columbus, and it's a big payment for a guy that hasn't really produced in the last few seasons, and he can be a good player, and he has been a good player, and he's played with Getzlaf and Perry in the Olympics, and there's a bit of chemistry there. But do you really want to give up the pieces you have to give up for a guy that's underperforming on a good team? And his cap here, like others have mentioned, is going to be a problem when we have to re-sign Kessler and Anderson, Gibson, Lindholm, Vatanen all in 2016. That's not something you want to have in the way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we talked about the free agency situation. It's not too big this year, but it's going to be really huge next season. Looking at this season, we've got Fletchman, Bolesky, and Boschman that are all unrestricted free agents, and then a couple of the restricted free agents in Edom and Wagner that we're trying to look at as well. And Thomas, we had you on. We talked about this before. What do you think as far as the strategy? Do you think the Ducks try to get Boschman and Bolesky, or do you think we let them walk and we do try to go find someone from another team?
I think if they can get both, they will, but I just don't. Bolesky scored 20 goals in the season for his first time ever. I'm not sure he's ever going to do it again, or at least certainly not on a consistent basis. Someone's going to give him stupid money, and I just don't think he's going to be worth $5 million a season. I'd love to keep him, and I think Murray clearly would too. So if he's willing to take a big discount, I think he will stay, but that's a huge question. As for a trade, the Ducks have a lot of young pieces, so if they were to trade a couple of young prospects, it wouldn't be the end of the world for the prospect system. But I always prefer to see how these prospects are going to pan out before you trade them off and decide which one's really going to be important to the future of your team. If you trade Nick Cudillos tomorrow and then he becomes a 30, 40 goal scorer in a couple of years, is that a good deal? Probably not.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a big concern looking at the future. Phil, I know you're a big Bolesky fan. What do you think as far as Bolesky taking a discount and staying with the Ducks?
I think that honestly he would, because he wants to stay here. And like I know that Thomas said, oh, you might not have that high scoring goals, but the thing is that we haven't been with him enough. Like if we sign him for another deal, like you don't know what's gonna happen. Like this could be his breakout season, and then he either continues that or he could build on it as well. I mean, you just don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I think my concern, and Eddy and I talked about this too, is the second line, Eddy. If you've got that chemistry with Bolesky, Silverberg, and Kessler, and we're not able to do some kind of a deal with Bolesky, then I think the issue is okay, who are we going to put on the second line as a left wing center in addition to the first line, Eddy?
Yeah, I don't think if he doesn't come back, it falls apart. Cogliano could play on that line. You could put Edom on that line and replicate Bolesky's success a little bit. I don't think if he's not there, that line's not going to produce at all. Kessler's a good player. Silverberg's a good player. They both stepped up in the playoffs, and Bolesky had a great season. But I'm in the boat where I kind of worry that if you give him $4 or $5 million to try and get 20 goals a season, I think he's probably going to regress next season, even if he does play on that line. And paying a guy that much, it's I don't want to compare him to the Clarkson deal that the Leafs did, but if you ever have to get rid of him for cap reasons, it's a little bit harder if he's not producing at the money you paid him for.
Yeah, that is a tricky situation, and another situation that's tricky for the Ducks too is the defense. Boschman's unrestricted free agent, and I've seen a lot of opinions out there. A lot of people are saying that just let him walk. I've heard a few other people saying don't. We should keep him. Another part of that's come up has been Wisniewski's name has been mentioned as being traded too. Some people said, okay, let's go get Boschman and trade Wisniewski because of his salary situation that we talked about as well, Eddy.
Yeah, I'd like to see Wisniewski get a shot, and I think all of us wanted to see him get a shot in the playoffs. Even Bob Murray came out and said he was kind of hoped that Wisniewski would have got a shot to play in the playoffs and get at least a couple games under his belt. But we didn't see him, and I'd kind of like to see him come back next season. I really don't see them trading him, at least right now. I believe in 2016, 2017, his cap drops to $3 million. So even at as a rental, he still has a little bit more value in that season to teams who are going to be contending. So I think you maybe keep him for this season. I think he fits in our top six better than some of the other guys we have, especially guys like Stoner. And but if you do re-sign Boschman, you got a problem there. You've got 8 defensemen who could play, and it's going to be a tough decision. But I really would like to see Boschman come back for at least one season.
Anybody else have any thoughts on Boschman coming back, or Wisniewski as well, trying to play those 7 or 8 defensemen?
I really think Boschman should stay just for that veteran impact in the locker room. We do have a lot of young defensemen coming up. Josh Manson is one of them that did play for us this season. I know he'll take a pay cut to stay because he really loves it in Anaheim, and he's such a nice person. I really hope that we can keep him. And Wisniewski, another great guy in the locker room, always working hard. It's definitely we're in a bunch here. We're definitely in a pickle. Go ahead, Phil.
Okay, I'm sorry about interrupting you. I think that Wisniewski, like you said, Mike, that we should have seen him play. But the problem is that we have a lot of highly paid defensemen on our team. Like Stoner is really high paid, and as you saw during the regular season, he wasn't performing. And then with Boschman, he performed really well throughout the season, but like in the postseason, he had some serious flaws, which shouldn't happen, especially with a veteran defenseman.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Boschman didn't do as well down the stretch, and then Stoner did do as well or better down the stretch. I mean, granted, he had a few little issues there too, Eddie. I think if the Ducks can keep Boschman, for a lower price, as Tasha mentioned that he wants to stay, I think it's something that they could work out, Eddie. It should be interesting. But I agree with you, Eddie. I think Wisniewski should definitely get some serious playing time next season.
Yeah, and especially with them firing Lauer and somebody else is going to be in charge of the power play, which is a good thing. If you look at the special teams the Ducks have had in the last few seasons and the players who are on the power play, and you would expect it to produce and it just hasn't. And maybe a new guy coming in, maybe Niedermayer or Paul McLean, we'll talk about in a bit, coming in and maybe taking control of that power play. Wisniewski might get a better chance, and he's known to be a quarterback on the power play where he was in Columbus, and that this might be his chance with a new guy in charge.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we can talk about that now. That's another issue that's come up too. McLean was in the news by Pierre LeBrun from ESPN. He had mentioned that the Ducks have been looking at him and others to fill that role since Lauer's now been booted from the team. And as we talked about, the power play was 28th this year in the regular season. The penalty kill was 15th. It actually, the Ducks did really well in the first two rounds on the special teams, and then obviously in the third round it just wasn't working out. But as you pointed out, Eddie, the last couple of years it hasn't done as well. Anybody's thoughts on Niedermayer maybe stepping up and taking that role, or the Ducks going outside and trying to get somebody else?
Well,
I think Niedermayer. Oh, go ahead, Adam.
I think of Niedermayer, I mean, and going back a little bit to Boschman, they are cup winners with this team. And I mean, I know we have Kessler who, he played in the finals, but Getzlaf, Perry, Boschman, and Niedermayer are the only people in the organization who have won the cup, unless you count like Todd Marchand or someone like that. And I actually think that bringing back Boschman brings that veteran presence, brings that experience. And the same thing goes for Niedermayer on the bench. I think that would actually bring a lot of that cup experience. Especially with, talking about the younger defensemen like Lindholm and Vatanen, bringing that Stanley Cup winning defense mind to the bench might actually do wonders for the team.
Tasha?
And remember, Scotty won a few cups, with New Jersey, and he was a power play specialist there, a really, really good quarterback. And that's why, Cam Fowler's been under his tutelage and Sami Vatanen. So definitely having Scotty behind the bench would be a huge bonus for our team in the power play department.
Yeah, and I also think that Scott Niedermayer would also make a good addition because, as you guys said, about the, young defenseman, because he already really works with them in the practices anyways. Because if you go to Anaheim Heights, and watch the practice, you'll see Scotty always practicing with the newer kids more than you will the veteran people. And I think that would be really helpful to our team. It's just having him on the bench full time.
Yeah, I think I agree with, we all agree on this. I think the only issue maybe, Eddie, that we talked about is his family situation, because obviously he does everything with the team while they're here in Anaheim and he doesn't go on the road. So I think if the Ducks do want to promote him or give him that responsibility, I really think, it's a good decision, but I think it's going to come down to Niedermayer wanting to do that decision, maybe, Eddie.
Yeah, and you got to look at the other options too. Paul McLean's not a bad option if Niedermayer, he's still going to be in the organization. It's not like Niedermayer is going anywhere if he doesn't become assistant coach. I'm sure he's everybody's first choice. We'd love to see him come in, but McLean spent a couple seasons in Ottawa coaching Erik Karlsson, who is one of the best offensive defensemen in the league, and bringing that experience to a guy like Vatanen or Lindholm or Fowler is could do wonders for them as well. And you look at other guys that could be available too. Adam Oates coached in Washington when he had Ovechkin on the power play, and they've always had a great power play there as well. And he could help out on the penalty kill too. So there's a lot of guys out there who could come in and do a good job for special teams. I'm sure we'd all love to see Scotty jump behind the bench, but I think anybody we bring in, it would be nice to see a new face and a new approach to the special teams.
And speaking about that, I mean, as far as the way the season went, Thomas and Eddy and I, we talked about this on the podcast before, and Adam, Phil, or Tasha kind of directed it at each of you as far as improving the team next season. And I'll start with Adam. What do you think, besides the assistant coaching spot, that is something that the Ducks can improve next season?
I think we got to build from within. You know, we were talking about maybe getting Nash or Lucic or anything like that, but you got to remember Nick Ritchie. I mean, 3 years, hopefully maybe 2 years. He's ready for a spot on the team, and we have so many prospects. You know, you never know who's going to pull a Hampus Lindholm and come in a year before they're supposed to and dominate. You know, that could be Shea Theodore, that could be Nick Cadiles or Cadiles, however you say his name. I think we have to build from within, definitely. Going out and getting a couple more roster players, maybe, especially like maybe a replacement for Thompson or something for the first couple of months is important. But I think we really just have to stick with it, what we got so far.
And Tasha, your thoughts on this, improving for next season?
I agree with Adam. I think we definitely need to build from within. We have a great deep prospect pool and work with what we have. Like Adam said, we have a lot of good kids coming up. Nick Ritchie, Shea Theodore, Cordelis. We just signed Marcus Pettersson to a 3-year entry-level contract. And he, is playing in Sweden. And we all know how great Sweden players are developed. So, yeah. But yeah, I think definitely I agree. Just build from within. Maybe get something for Thompson, but I think probably just stick with Chris Wagner and get him a little bit, and maybe move Raquel up to third line duty, and then put Wags on the fourth line.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Phil, do you have anything to add as far as building for next season? And then we'll kind of talk about the injuries here in just a minute, as Tasha talked about.
Yeah, I honestly think that, like you guys all say, I think that we should build from within, because we have these great players like Cordelis and Wagner and stuff like that. So I think Wagner would be a good either fourth or third line center for Thompson, and I think that we should not worry about signing a center, because that would make it easier for us to have cap room that we need for not only this season, but like I said, next season as well.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna add a center though, you can you add a guy to a 1 year, maybe under $1 million, not a really to a 2-way contract, not a big name guy, Manny Malhotra or Max Lapierre or one of those types of guys that you can put on a 2-way, and if Wagner's not panning out, and you can send him back down and bring this guy up and give him a shot. A guy who's good at face-offs, been playing fourth line most of his career, and then you've just got more options in case another guy goes down or something like that. Like we had David Steckel a couple years ago, just a guy who can come up and play a nice defensive role if somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's going to be a key, pulling up somebody like that, like you were talking about, Eddy. I think the injury situation is going to kind of make this a little bit, hairy. As everybody knows, Thompson had surgery, and now we found out he's going to be out 5 or 6 weeks. Tasha knows a little bit more about these types of injuries, given what she does outside of our hockey stuff. So I'll kind of direct it towards Tasha. But can you kind of fill in everybody with the injuries that Thompson has, and we can talk about what the Ducks strategy will be handling that.
Yes. So what Thompson has is called a labral tear. This is in the glenoid, which is the shoulder. There's also a labral tear in the hip, which that's what goalies usually get. So 3 bones that attach your arm to your shoulder. You got your scapula, your humerus, your big arm bone, and your clavicle, your collarbone. And the rotator cuff is in there too, but he doesn't have a rotator cuff injury. So part of the scapula is the glenoid, which makes like a little soft pocket for your the I'm totally getting the giggles for your shoulder bone to attach to. And so what happens is that soft tissue can tear if it gets caught in between the humerus. So basically like a direct injury to the shoulder, like falling on an outstretched arm or overuse, which definitely happens for, being a centerman anyway, and just a hockey player in general. So what they did find out, they did the MRI, they found out that he has 2 tears. That's going to lengthen his recovery process. They are going to go on arthroscopically and repair those 2 tears. But with the shoulder repair, it's extensive physical therapy, which is why it's 4 to 5 months he's out now versus the 3 months before if it was just 1 tear. So it's more of extensive of a surgery and very, very painful recovery for poor Nate Thompson.
Yeah, and I think that's a big issue. I mean, Thomas, we talked about this. I think the Ducks should, definitely on the RFA stand front, get Wagner signed and possibly see him play. If we don't draft a center, on the draft or get somebody like Eddy's talking about. What do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, I think it's Wagner's role to take right now. Although just glancing quickly through the free agent list, there are a couple of centers who wouldn't mind. One of them is Marcel Gotch. I remember he played in San Jose a number of years ago and was just very good at winning faceoffs. So you guys also mentioned Maxime Lapierre. He was on the Ducks for a brief sprint a couple of years ago. Just anyone like that on a 1-year deal, I wouldn't be opposed to. But personally, I would prefer to see Wagner take over that role because I think if he has a future with his team in the NHL, it's kind of as that third, fourth line center. So let's give that to him for a couple of months and see if he can actually perform in that role for a long period of time.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, and I think it's going to be interesting to see, Eddy. We talked about this before we got on the show, but a lot of people don't realize this, that Thompson was the Ducks' best faceoff man in the playoffs. Granted, he didn't play in the first round, but he was at 58.6%, Kessler at 57.6%. So, him going out like this, Eddy, it's a little bit concerning. I mean, I think Wagner can definitely fill the role like Thomas and all the rest of us are saying, but I think it's going to be interesting come October, November.
Yeah, and he really filled a role and played some key matchups in the playoffs, but I'm not too worried. He's not going to provide much offense. Obviously, he can have a role on the penalty kill and be a good fourth line center, but it's not really a big loss when you're just starting the season. It's not like you're missing, anybody from your top 6. Obviously, like you said, he's one of our best face-off guys, if not the best, and it's going to be a loss there. But he'll be back, and he'll be back, early on in the season, and it's not going to be too much of a loss.
And the one other injury that came out, and we can kind of spend some time on this because there's been some criticism too directed towards the captain, Ryan Getzlaf. They announced that he had a sports hernia injury, which they didn't say when it happened. A lot of us suspect it was during the Western Conference Final, obviously because the last couple games you could kind of tell that Getzlaf wasn't, skating as well as normal. But he's had that injury. It's not going to require surgery. He's, should be good to go for the beginning of the season. But I'm just kind of curious. We'll go around. Everybody will talk about this. I'll go back to you, Eddy, on this, and then direct it, to each of you. But what are your thoughts as far as Getzlaf getting that injury and, the criticism that he's been getting? He's been getting a lot of criticism from some of the fans.
Yeah, and in the last few games in the Chicago series, he was kind of non-existent, and he said he was, playing terrible, and he didn't really pick up his game from there. So if he got the injury in those few games, it could explain why he wasn't, playing up to the what we expect from him. But I don't know. It's hard. I didn't really blame Getzlaf and question his captaincy as others did. But it's up to him and Perry and Kessler to lead the way in these types of games. But it's tough. They're not going to tell you when the injury was, so you don't want to blame a guy if he was injured. At least he was playing through it. But it's an injury that will heal hopefully for next season. We'll definitely see him at the start, and we'll have to wait and see. I don't think we'll ever hear when he actually got the injury.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll shift back to Tasha on this one, and going back to the medical standpoint, as far as the sports hernia, can you talk a little bit about that and how it restricts basically the player's ability to effectively play the game?
Yeah, so on like a traditional hernia where you have a rip in your abdominal wall and organs are poking out, a sports hernia is a little bit different. It's definitely a soft tissue area. It occurs in the groin area, and instead of like organs poking out, it's basically a tear or a weakening in the deep layers of your abdominal wall, which also affects your tendons and muscles of your hip. So definitely, you can tell that he was in pain the way he was playing. Um, and if I could wage a guess, I think it happened in game 3, because as of game 4, he skated differently. Things just weren't going as well for him. Now, I don't want to scare anybody, but if the PT and rest do not help Getzlaf, he could require surgery. Could, in parentheses, so don't get mad at me. But yeah, so very, very painful. And I wish him all the best. Poor guy. Leave Getsy alone. That's all I'm going to say on the subject.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think all of us agree with you on that. Adam, what's your take as far as the injury and criticism and everything?
I mean, as far as injuries go, I mean, Tasha knows a lot more about it than I do, so I can't really speak well on that. But I mean, as for criticism, this is a guy, Ryan Getzlaf, had 20 points in 16 games in the playoffs. He had 70 points in 77 games in the regular season. Last year, he was a Hart Trophy finalist, and I think he won the Mark Messier Leadership Award. And we had that first season of captaincy where he faltered a bit, but ever since then, he's come back stronger than ever, and it's a learning curve. I think the criticism from the fans is completely unfounded. I think he's going to come back with a vengeance next year and once again prove everybody wrong and prove why he's the captain.
I agree. I think the exact same thing. I think, after that first season, when he didn't quite do as well, he's been, answering the bell ever since. And
Point game player.
Yeah, exactly. I think he will. And Phil, what are your thoughts as far as Getzlaf and his status?
Yeah, well, I don't like Adam said, I don't really know that much about injuries. As you know, Tasha knows a lot more than me. But as far as a captaincy, I think that he's one of the best captains in the league. And to say that he doesn't deserve it is very unfair. And he plays with a lot of heart in every single game that he plays. So to say that he doesn't deserve it is baloney.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all on the same wavelength. Thomas, is there anything you want to add as far as Getzlaf and how he did in the season?
I think the only thing I would say is, if you're healthy enough to play, you are healthy enough to be held accountable for your play. But I still think Getzlaf gave it his all when he was on the ice as much as he could. So I won't criticize him for not being able to raise his game because of the injury. But I will say that Jonathan Toews was the better player in Games 6 and 7, and that is one of the primary reasons why the Hawks advanced over the Ducks.
And I think that's a good point, Eddie. I think we talked about that too. Taves and Kane, especially in the last couple of games. I mean, you have to kind of give it to them. They, we shut them down early on. They didn't really do a whole, lot in the first 3 games, but we just couldn't really contain them. Especially down the stretch, like Thomas said, in the last couple games, Eddie.
Yeah, like Taves, Kane, and Keith were better than Getzlaf, Perry, and Kessler, if you want to take the top 3 players from each team. They were better in those final games, and that's the reason they won and moved on to the final and are 1 game away from winning the Stanley Cup right now. They're a great team. They have a lot of chemistry together. They don't even have to play on the same line, and they can still hurt you. So that's the main reason they moved on. Their big guys stepped up, and they were better than ours.
Yeah, and talking about the Stanley Cup Final, the Hawks won yesterday, and now they're 1 game away. We'll kind of go around. If anybody wants to share any thoughts, I'll go back to you, Eddie, first, and we'll just talk about that. Any thoughts that you have? The series has been tight. It's been 1 goal for the entire time of the series. Nobody's had a 2-goal lead, and I believe that was the first time in Stanley Cup history. So it's been a tight battle. But you think Chicago, finishes this up, Game 6 in Chicago, or you think Tampa might be able to push it to 7?
I
Um,
think Tampa can push it to 7 just because of their road record this the Stanley Cup playoffs. They're insane. How many games they won in MSG? What was it? 4? That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think they can push it to 7. Eddie, what do you think?
yeah, definitely. Like I could see them pushing to 7. As much as I want Tampa Bay to win, if Chicago wins, then we lost to the Stanley Cup champions. So it's not as bad, but it's hard. This is a young Tampa Bay team. Bishop might not play. They're playing in Chicago. Tampa's shown they can win on the road in the playoffs, but this is a team that's won 2 of the last 5 Stanley Cups, on the verge of winning 3 of the last 6, and they're playing at home for a chance to win it. I don't think they could ask for much more than that. It's going to be tough for Tampa Bay, and we're going to have to see how they can do on Monday. But if Chicago, I think Chicago will probably win this on Monday. But if Tampa can force a Game 7, they've got the advantage at home.
Yeah, and another issue we talked about this too before going on the podcast is who does Tampa Bay start in net? With Bishop having an undisclosed injury, we talked about it. We're all pretty sure it's a lower body injury. Just watching him go side to side, and then of course that awful goal that I tweeted out yesterday that I was saying, remember this play, and of course it ended up being the difference, which I hoped it wouldn't be, but. I guess I'll start with Adam. What do you think? You come back with Bishop in Game 6, even if he's not 100%?
It depends on what percent he is. I mean, Vasilevsky, he looked pretty good coming in, and then coming in a second time. Weird game goalie wise, but he looked pretty solid, and he's got a lot of upside. He's one of the brightest goalie prospects in the league. But if it's such a I do not want to be John Cooper right now. That is one of the toughest decisions you can make. Away game, uh, chance to make it Game 7 at home ice. I mean, if Bishop is above like 80%, I will go with him.
I think it's a good point. I think part of this too, and I'll direct this at Tasha. We talked about this too. Is his willingness to admit what level that he's playing at. I mean, he could say he's 80, 90%, but maybe he's only 70%, Tasha. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't. And from the way he was getting up from the butterflies, I'm not sure I think it might be a knee issue. Again, we don't know. They haven't disclosed anything. But he's moving side to side on butterfly pretty good. But I think getting up, I think it's his knee.
Yeah, and I think that first goal did not help with the collision that he had. You could tell when he went down, he had a hard time getting back up. Thomas, if you're Cooper, who do you go with? Do you go with Bishop, or do you bring in the rookie?
If he can play, I go with Bishop, no question.
And I guess last, Phil, same for you. You go with Bishop, or you go with the new player?
You would go with Bishop. You have to go with your starting goalie, especially in a critical game like this. And forcing it to Tampa, you never know what's going to happen in Game 7.
Yeah, I think that's the goal. If Tampa Bay can win this next one and then get it to Game 7, anything can happen. The series has been, so close. I've been watching all the games, and it's been, just tight throughout. And any little mistake could be the difference, Eddie, in the series.
Yeah, and I think a big thing, not just with Bishop being hurt, is Kucherov is hurt now as well for Tampa Bay, and that line has been great for them. Thompson and Kucherov are Johnson and Kucherov are leading the league in points right now, and missing him and on that line with Palat is going to be big, and Drouin might be drawing in for them, but that's going to be a big miss for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. And one thing I have to say about Chicago too is that the fact that they've been, putting so many minutes on 4 defensemen and been able to win games, you have to tip your hat to that team and Coach Quenneville. I mean, you have to give him credit. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Most teams can't do that. I mean, we look to the Kings and what happened with Voinov, and we saw how they fell apart down the stretch. So. That's definitely something that I think that this team, whether or not they win Game 6 or they go to 7 or whatever, has just been a tremendous effort on their part, Eddie.
Yeah, and it's been 3 defensemen actually for the last few games because Oduya got hurt, so it's been Yamos and Keith and Seabrook playing 30 minutes apiece in the last few games, and Kessler said that no human can withstand the punishment that they're giving them, but they've proven they can, and they've gone to the final and done it there, and a big effort from these guys, but they're gonna have a tough offseason after this.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure. Like you said, they're down to 3 now. They played most of the playoffs with 4, so it's going to be interesting to see how they do. And speaking about the off season and what's going on, we'll kind of go around with everybody and kind of give your thoughts on the season and looking forward. And basically this is your time to just share whatever you want about the team in general. And I'll start off with Adam. I'll let you go first, and share your thoughts on the Duck season and next season.
I mean, all I can say about next season is our cup window is still open. As long as we keep it within, with a couple of minor trades here or there. But I think the absolute wrong thing to do would be to blow up the team or get rid of one of our core players. I think we still have a lot of tremendous upside for next season. I'm personally really excited to see how we start. Now that Kessler's been here for a whole year and everything, seeing what kind of stuff we can do. As for being reflective, looking back on this year, it's hard to call it a success based on not finishing in the third round. But I mean, empirically, it still was a success. We made it to the Western Conference Finals for the first time since 2007. So I mean, I'm happy with what happened, and I'm a little terrified for next season in one respect. Boudreau's first season, we lost first round Game 7. Second season, we lost second round Game 7. This year, we lost Game 7 in the third round. If we lose Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals next year, that might be it for me. We're cursed. But you never know. You never know. I think we have a good future.
I'll go with Tasha next on this one. What do you think as far as Boudreau and the playoffs and obviously the season in general?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed. I'm still proud of our team, and we did improve over last season, over the last few seasons. I love Bruce Boudreau. I love the energy he gives our team, the positivity he sends to our players. I'm excited for next season, and like Adam said, I'm a little worried about the Game 7, but how about we don't go to Game 7 and we finish it in Game 6 like we should have this year. I'm excited to see some of our young players come up. I always love going to rookie camps and seeing how they're progressing. I'm super excited. Is it October yet?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's how we all feel right now, because we all know that Monday could be the last game of the season, if not Wednesday. So the NHL season's almost over. So October, it couldn't come any faster. Phil, what are your thoughts? I know you've shared before on social media that, and with us too, that you want Bolesky to come back, of course. But other than that, what are your thoughts on this season and going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I really want Bolesky to come back. He's my main man on the second line, and it'd be interesting to see the rookies come, and wondering if anyone will crack the lineup full time. That'd be kind of interesting. I think Cordelis has a good chance, and also I'm really looking forward to not only October but also September, because that's when a lot of the rookie stuff goes on.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's when we may see some other people. And Thomas, I know we talked about this as far as next season. In addition to your thoughts, what do you think about some of those, younger guys cracking the lineup as well?
And the Ducks have just so many great young prospects that it's incredibly exciting right now to see what the future holds. And as I think Tasha mentioned earlier, they just signed Marcus Peterson to a 3-year entry-level deal. He's going to stay in Sweden for at least one more season, because that's what Murray said a couple weeks ago. He saw him in February and just absolutely loves and raves about this kid's future and thinks he's going to be a great player for years to come. But as for next season, we've got Josh Manson, we have Shea Theodore, Nick Ritchie, Nick Cordelis, Stefan Nason. So many young players have a chance to make this roster. But for the ones who don't, I'm really going to try next season to make it down to San Diego and try and catch a couple of our games down there. It's a great opportunity for us Duck fans to finally see our young players before they make it to Anaheim. And I think that's really exciting that we could do that finally.
It is. It's so exciting.
It is. It's awesome. I mean, I think I've told you guys this too. Is my wife and I, we go down there for the Charger games, the Padre games, and we also just go down there just to go for the heck of it because it's not that far from where most of us are at. Except for Adam and Eddie. I know you guys are a little bit farther away. But,
a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. Tennessee and Canada. It's not too.
A little far away.
Yeah, I'm definitely coming down from the Bay Area next year to go to a couple games down there.
Yeah, I'm going to be down there next year, actually.
But it's going to be good. I mean, having them closer, and we talked about this before on the podcast too, Eddie. That's going to help the Ducks out, not having to have these players recalled all the way from Virginia. Being that half of the season is played in Anaheim, it's going to work out for the team a lot better next year, Eddie.
Yeah, and emergency call-ups are going to be a lot easier, and it's just going to be nice to have them not go across the country to come all the way over to play games if it's on a home game or either way. It's just nice to have them that close, and just with how the team should look next year. I think we just got to keep the core together. If I don't see many of the younger guys making it right out of camp. They'd have to really impress and basically beat out one of the guys who is on the roster right now, which is Edom could get beat out. Other guys have a chance to get beat out, but somebody's gonna have to really shine. But just keep the core together and see how the rookies do. And when I've just watched them in San Diego, and if they got a chance, then we'll see them come up sometime during the season, I'm sure.
Yeah, and any other final thought on Boudreau or the Ducks next year? Any thoughts about how we're going to do, Eddie?
Yeah, it's gonna be. I hope we get a nice, a good start. I like Boudreau and the system that the Ducks play under him, and he received a lot of criticism obviously after losing in Game 7, and I think they just got to start out strong, and it really comes down to the playoffs again next year. If we lose in Game 7, then I might start to believe there's a curse, but you can't really put all the blame on the coach. The Ducks play a good style; it works for them, and in the end, the big guys got to step up, and everybody's got to come through if we want to win the cup.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of my final thought too on this whole season. Is we all talked about, a lot of people were trying to point the finger at certain people, whether it's Getzlaf or Perry or the coach, and yeah, some of the down the stretch in the Chicago series, definitely some of our stars didn't play as well as Chicago's. That's without a given. But I think you have to look at this as an overall team effort. And you can't really hang it on one person. Obviously, there's a few people that just didn't get it done when we needed to get it done. But I think next season we'll be fine. I think we'll be up there in the top again of the division and the conference. We're going to be playoff bound as well. And it's just going to be a question how far we go. And I think for everybody that's been following us, that we'll keep track of everything as best we can, as always. And it's going to be a good future for the Ducks next season and seasons to come. And we're going to have a lot more podcasts too, try and get some more guests. This has kind of been, I guess, our second one that we've done with a group. We had some other people after the trade deadline earlier in the year. So we may try and do another one of these at the end of the summer or the beginning in the September when they're playing again. But I want to thank all the writers for coming on and thank all of you guys for helping out, and Eddie too, doing the show. If it wasn't for all of you guys, it would just be me talking by myself. So I really want to appreciate and just give a thanks to all of you on the show that are helping out. And then, of course, the ones that couldn't make the show, obviously, I want to thank them as well. And, we'll just keep going for next year and hope for the best.